Welcome to the JSC Black History Month program. This is the first program we've had in a number of years, and I'm glad to see you all made it out to this event. I think it's important for us to have these gatherings so we can get to know each other as a community and so we continue to maintain our cultural awareness. During the program, we're going to have several speakers, and you may have questions. We'd like to ask you to hold your questions until the end, after Deborah Urbanski's closing. That'll keep us on time so those of you who have tight schedules and need to get back to work can do so. For the rest, you can continue to stay and ask questions as long as you wish, and you can continue to enjoy the exhibits out in the lobby afterwards. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Jessica at Tockney from the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity. Please welcome Jessica.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. My name is Jessica Tockney, and I am the Special Emphasis Program Manager for the Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity. And a part of the Special Emphasis Program is to highlight the Special Observance Awareness Months, which this month is Black History Month. So our office collaborated with the Employee Assistance Program as well as the NSBE Houston Space Chapter. So thank you all for coming. Our speaker today, our first speaker, is Dr. David Garrison. He is Associate Professor and Chair of Physics at the University of Houston Clear Lake. Dr. Garrison began his academic career at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he earned his BS in Physics in 1997. During his course of study, he minored in Earth, Atmospheric, and Planetary Science and completed a concentration in Political Science. He then moved on to the Pennsylvania State University, where he completed a PhD in Physics, after which he accepted a position as a visiting assistant professor at U of H Clear Lake, and after 1 year, he was promoted to tenure track. During his time in academia, Dr. Garrison earned several awards from organizations including NASA, the Institute for Space Systems Operations, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the Council of Graduate Schools, and the Texas Educational Grid Project. During his time on the faculty of U of H Clear Lake, Dr. Garrison served as chair of the Physical Science and Physics program and successfully developed and oversaw the approval of a revised bachelor's degree in physical science, a bachelor's degree in physics, a master's degree in physics, a professional master's of physics subplan in technical management, and a collaborative PhD program in physics. His research in computational and theoretical physics consists of work in numerical relativity and cosmology. That is an impressive biography. Please help me welcome Dr. Garrison to the stage.
All right, thank you for coming. Hope everybody can hear me. I've got, I don't like to stand behind a podium the whole time, and also this talk is a little bit different for me because it's not a science talk so much as I get to talk about Black history, and so I have a few notes that I'm going to have to read off of. So, and also one thing I've noticed about why I tell my students why we go into physics instead of medicine is because we have a horrible memory. So when I was approached about this, this is sort of a talk I've wanted to give for a while, and this is about black scientists and engineers in this country, which is something which doesn't seem to get a whole lot of notice. And I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to talk about certain people specifically. And intentionally, I did not choose people who worked for NASA or people you might know. So what I'd like to do is go through and first start off with just a few statistics to just tell you about where we are right now. African Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population. We only earn around 9% of all the U.S. bachelor's degrees. When you get down to science and engineering fields, hard sciences and engineering, it's only about 6.8%. In my field in physics, that drops down to 2.9% for physics bachelor's degrees. And as you go to advanced degrees, the numbers decline even more. So, for example, I think the year I graduated with my PhD, there was about 13 of us. And last year, my program here at UH Clear Lake produced 10% of all the African American master's degrees in physics. That's not saying we produced a whole lot. That's just saying that there's just not very many out there. That 10% was 2. And I also want to highlight this. About 22% of these degrees, and I mean 22% of these engineering and science degrees, are earned at HBCUs. So this is also something to show the importance of these schools and how there is a real place for them. And part of why I think that there aren't very high percentages and that we need places like HBCUs to produce these degrees, I'll kind of get to towards the end of the talk. Now, first off, I want to mention a few of the famous African American scientists that you all hopefully have heard of. And these are people who, well, everybody I'm going to talk about here is really extraordinary. Not just extraordinary scientists, but extraordinary people for a variety of different reasons. And there hasn't been a lot as far as numbers have been concerned. You're not going to find, from what I showed before, tons and tons of African American scientists, but you are going to find that a lot of them are really extraordinary. The first one I mentioned is Benjamin Banneker. And he's best known for helping to survey the city of Washington, D.C. and set up that city. Now, there's a lot of things that aren't known about him. There's not a lot known about his heritage before he was born or his ancestors. One thing I read, and this is everything I've read has been basically contradictory on him. But we do know he was born free back in 1731, which in the U.S. really put him in a very small group. His grandfather is believed to have come from a tribe in Africa where they had a very strong knowledge of astronomy. And he was bought by a woman who was an indentured servant in the U.S., and he cleared the land, and he set up an irrigation system, and he taught her about crop rotation and started her farming. And so she freed him and married him. And so that led to his mother, who was born free, and his father, not much was known about him. It's believed that he was first-generation slave who escaped, and so Benjamin Banneker was born free at this time from 2 free parents, and a lot of his knowledge of astronomy, which came in really handy in surveying Washington, came from his was basically passed down from his grandfather through his grandmother. Although all of his writings basically don't say anything about having this European heritage, but his formal education ended when he was old enough to farm. And that was pretty common back then. As soon as they were able to start producing on a farm, there wasn't much time for the classroom. But he informally studied astronomy over these years, and he learned about machines. He had one accomplishment that was interesting where he borrowed a pocket watch from somebody, took it apart, and built a wooden clock from it by basically carving little pieces out of wood. And this clock ran for over 50 years. So he basically kept this clock running the rest of his life. He used these astronomy calculations to write an almanac. And this almanac was very widely read. And it kind of gained him a lot of fame. And that's also how he got into the situation of being able to survey Washington, D.C. And he spent a lot of time conversing via letters with Thomas Jefferson. And he was one of the first African Americans to actually take on the issue of slavery in this country. And so it really went beyond the science as far as some of the things he's done. The next person, George Washington Carver. Everybody knows him because of work he did with peanuts. And there's a lot more to him than that, obviously. George Washington Carver, he was born into slavery, but he was born in 1864. So they don't know exactly when, but they do know that it wasn't very long after he was born that slavery ended in this country. So when he was about a week old, his mother, and his sister were all kidnapped by night raiders. And they were going to kidnap him and sell him to some other slave owners. And so I guess there was some big adventure there. His mother and his sister died, and he was returned. And so when slavery ended, his former slave owners adopted him and raised him as their own child, which was not expected at that time. And they taught him how to read and write. They also they really started his education, and from Ella's accounts, they were pretty nice to him. And he really wanted to continue his education, and he realized that that was not the place he could do it. So he went off on his own in order to pursue an education. He ended up attending college at Simpson College, got a bachelor's and a master's degree. He later, while he was at Simpson College, he studied agriculture, and later on, Booker T. Washington actually appointed him to lead the agricultural department at Tuskegee. And he was there for 47 years, although he did travel around quite a bit. And that's where he did a bulk of his work with agriculture. And his whole purpose in this was really to find other uses for things that farmers could grow, particularly to help poor farmers. And so what happened was farmers at the time, they grow cotton, and cotton was a cash crop. But there was a boll weevil infestation that killed a lot of the cotton crop, and also you can't eat cotton. So they wanted to be able to grow things that they could eat and that they could use for other substitutes for household products, like cleaning products, things like that. And, so that if they couldn't sell their crops, they could use them for other purposes, or they can use them for things when they couldn't afford to buy stuff. And so that was his big contribution to agriculture. And he became so good at it that it was really the peanut farmers, both white and black, who sent him to Washington to speak on their behalf. And so he testified before Congress many times, and you can imagine what that must have been like back then. You have African-American men going, not long after slavery ended in this country, into the halls of Congress to testify. And basically, what happened was he flipped everything around. And they gained a respect for him that was just not seen in this country for a long time. He also was a little bit different than a lot of scientists, and he wrote on science and religion. And that was somewhat of a controversy back then. He also later became good friends with Henry Ford. He helped improve race relations in this country. He met with at least 3 U.S. presidents during his time. And all the while, even though he was a faculty member at Tuskegee, I guess he was sort of a pain in the butt to them. So that shows you he was a real true scientist. The last of the more famous people I want to talk about is Charles Drew. And he's known for pioneering the techniques for blood banking and blood transfusions. Now, this was a really important thing because you could see around when he lived, it was kind of leading up to World War II, and the issue of having a massive number of troops overseas and them getting injured and needing blood transfusion, needing a way to save blood and safely give them transfusions. This saved countless lives. And he, in addition to doing this, he helped pioneer this system of blood banking and blood transfusion. He was also the first black surgeon to be an examiner on the American Board of Surgery. What got him into medicine in the first place was that his sister had died of influenza. And that was sort of his, what pushed him into wanting to save lives. And he protested against racial segregation, particularly as he felt that you shouldn't segregate blood, that the blood doesn't really matter and it's going to work for everybody. There's an urban legend about him, and it's not true. He did not die after being in a car accident because they refused to give him a blood transfusion. He died because he was in a car accident. Okay. Now, these are some people who I'm going to go through who you may not know or may not know very well. This is a person, Edward Boucher, who, he's well known among black physicists, but not very well known among the rest of the public. His most notable accomplishments we know him for is he was the first African American to get a PhD in the United States. and that PhD happened to be in physics. So he did not seem to be one of these people who, he's probably an easier way he could have gotten to a PhD, but he did not choose that. At the time, he was actually the 6th American in the entire country ever to get a PhD in physics. And he, a little bit about his background, he was graduate 6th in his class from Yale. He basically went to Yale for all of his degrees. He was the first black person nominated to become a Phi Beta Kappa, although he did not get inaugurated until later, so he actually became like the second to actually get in. He, when he graduated with his PhD, he couldn't find a job. He actually taught high school for a while, and he taught in Philadelphia at the Institute for Colored Youth for about 26 years. And then he taught at St. Paul's Norman, an industrial college, and then finally became a faculty member at Bishop College. So it took him a while to get to a faculty position at a university, which was his goal. And a lot of that had to do with the racism at the time. But he really blazed a path, and now there is actually an award named after him by the American Physical Society. It's given to an outstanding minority physicist every year. David Crosweth. He is somebody we should know and be very thankful for here in Houston. He was one of the early pioneers of air conditioning. So, he's a brilliant man. He went to Purdue University, studied mechanical and electrical engineer, held 39 U.S. patents, 80 international patents about heating and air conditioning systems. He wrote the book on using water systems for heating and ventilation systems. He's also pretty well known for developing the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems for Rockefeller Center and Radio City Music Hall in New York City. And after retiring from all this, he went back to Purdue and taught there. Okay. Next up, some of you may know this guy. This is Lenny Johnson. And he was not just a great engineer, but he was also a really smart businessman. He invented the Super Soaker. This product produced almost $1 billion in sales since it was first came out. It has 80 patents and over 20 of them are pending. His background, from what I could tell, was in nuclear engineering. And what he did basically was in 89, he formed a company, an engineering firm, to license this Super Soaker to Lamari Corp., which was later bought by Hasbro. So he was smart enough to kind of hold on to his own invention and keep going with it. He has 2 companies which are basically working on energy technology. And he's done a lot in terms of power systems, and he's actually done some things with NASA on spacecraft power systems. So he's about the only person I'm going to mention up here who's got sort of this NASA connection, and this is about as close as we're going to get to home here. And so basically one thing he did was he did a lot of stuff with solar power plants. He did things with ocean thermal power generation to actually convert electrical thermal energy to electrical energy without steam, and something that's highly scalable and something which is going to be very, very important since energy is one of the biggest problems we have right now. Let's see. This is Ernest Just. This guy, I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of him. Okay, few people. But he has got a very, very fascinating life story. First off, when he was young, his father and his grandfather died when he was very young. So his mother raised his younger brother and his sister alone, so as a single mother, and then she founded a town that they named after her called Maryville. So, I mean, he's already off to a good start. While he was away, she wanted him to further his education, so she sent him away to a boarding school. And so while he was away in boarding school, his mother passed away. So you can imagine how devastating that is. And yet he still finished a 4-year program in 3 years and graduated with the highest grades in his class. He went on to go to Dartmouth College, where he graduated with honors. He later helped 3 Howard students found Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Some people may have heard of that. And after all this, he couldn't get a teaching job at a white institution. He really wanted to go to a research university and teach. So what happened was he taught at Howard University for a while, and then he later on went to Marine Biological Lab at Woods Hall. And so he was basically one of the first people to talk about studying whole cells under normal conditions rather than breaking them apart. Before that, biologists would try to break the cells apart. And so he knew more about cell membranes and cell surfaces, which is very important to what we do, what a lot of people do in biology nowadays. Now, here's where he probably made what was probably the non-smart decision of his life. He wanted to go to a research institute, so he went to Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin in 1930. Not good timing. And so after that, of course, he realized that politically it's not the best place to be, so he relocated to Paris. And he was there in 1933, and he was caught up in working on his research. They wanted him to leave. He said, no, I got more stuff to do in the lab. Briefly ended up becoming a prisoner of war. And so he was a prisoner of war, and he was already getting sick. And he was freed, when the Allies came in, and came back to the U.S., where he ended up dying. But it was basically from, I think he had cancer or some other disease he died from. And actually, in 1984, there's a biography of him which was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. So, interesting stuff in that, the guy's life just did not go anything like he must have ever planned or imagined. This is Vivian Thomas. This is one of my personal favorites out of this whole list. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie called Something the Lord Made on HBO. And one thing that struck me about this was one of the only movies I've ever seen about an African-American scientist. Anyway, I mean, you just don't see it outside of science fiction. And one thing he did, his background was incredible. This guy, he started off, normal guy growing up in an African-American sort of middle-class home. And he wanted to go to college and he wanted to become a doctor. And people would think, okay, he didn't become a doctor because of the racial injustice or segregation. It was really because he lost his money in the Great Depression. So he had all this money saved up to go to college. The Great Depression came, the bank closed down, he lost his money, he couldn't go. So he worked as a carpenter for a while, and he was very, very good with his hands, had very good technique. And then one of his friends got him a job with the Dr. Blaylock, where I think they were at Vanderbilt at the time. And so his job was basically to clean out pet cages and do little lab stuff. And Blaylock noticed that this guy had an incredible amount of talent. He was incredibly good with his hands. He knew how to work with machines. He knew how to work with the animals. He was very careful. And he made him a lab assistant. And so as a lab assistant, the first thing they started doing was they started doing research on shock. And, with soldiers going into shock in a battle or people from loss of blood. And at the time, they didn't know what caused shock, and they were the ones who figured it out. Later on, they worked on vascular and cardiac surgery when it was considered completely taboo to do any kind of surgery on the heart. Open heart surgery was just thought as something that would be impossible. So they discovered a surgical solution to the blue baby syndrome, which was a problem where small children, they would turn blue and die, and it was really a problem with how their heart was pumping used blood back instead of pumping fresh blood. he also, when they did this, what they did was they moved from Vanderbilt to Johns Hopkins University. And when they got to Johns Hopkins, Blaylock had a ton of other responsibilities. And so he basically left Vivian in the lab to do the research as Blaylock went out and did the clinical and did the faculty politicking stuff that we never get any credit for. So while he was doing this, he invented the first surgical instruments for cardiac surgery. And he performed this surgery on dogs that they would keep in the lab. And he actually, when it came time for them to actually perform the surgery, Blaylock would actually have him in the operating room coaching him through how to do the surgery. You know, since he was not an MD or even a BS, you couldn't, you know, at the time it really wasn't right for him to be just doing the surgery solo. So they had a really complicated relationship because, you know, he was still getting paid like a janitor through all this. And he actually would do bartending to make ends meet, and he would actually bartend some of Blaylock's parties. But at the same time, he was completely indispensable to Blaylock. So it was a lot of negotiating going back and forth. He was never mentioned in any of the Journal of the American Medical Association articles on any of the work that they've done. The only people that really acknowledged him were the surgeons that he trained. And he ended up training some of the best surgeons in the world at the time. So eventually, he also wanted to become a doctor, so he thought about quitting and going and becoming a doctor. That kind of didn't work for him because it turned out, even though he had pioneered most of surgery and had trained many surgeons, none of that counted for anything when it came to academic transfer credit. And so Morgan State wanted him to actually start at the beginning with freshman chemistry and freshman physics and all that other stuff and work his way through to eventually become a doctor. And by then he said, it's too late for that. He just didn't have the time for it. So he comes back to Johns Hopkins. They do give him the salary he deserves. The students who he trained were basically his biggest fans, and they rallied for him. Eventually, they gave him an honorary doctorate in 1976. So he did get his doctorate, but they could not give him an honorary medical doctorate. So what they did was they gave him a doctorate in a different area and then appointed him as a faculty member and an instructor of surgery. So he officially, before that, he was actually the director of their labs. So really did a lot, and he did this, a lot of it self-taught. And so there are a lot of surgeons who studied under him who are still practicing today who are incredibly well known. Now, Ernest Wilkins, this guy is very interesting. He, youngest student ever to enter the University of Chicago, 13 years old. I mean, the word genius, I don't think even begins to describe that. He majored in mathematics, and by the time he was 19, he'd finished his PhD. Then he went on to work at the Manhattan Project and was one of the pioneers of nuclear energy and nuclear science. He later founded Howard's math PhD program. He was a distinguished professor of applied mathematical physics at Howard. He was president of the American Nuclear Society. And even after he'd gotten his degree, he later on went back and got a BS and MS in mechanical engineering from NYU. And so he showed, you never really get too old to get these degrees. So even after he was already pretty accomplished, you have a PhD when you're 19 and you still go back to school. That's saying a lot. And of course, he has over 100 papers in differential geometry, linear differential equations, nuclear engineering, all these different fields. Okay. Now, I talked enough about the guys, so I need to move on, and I want to talk about Rebecca Davis Lee Crumper. She was known to be the first African-American woman to become a physician in the U.S. She wrote a book of medical discourses, and this is the first book on medicine ever written by an African-American. And this book provides the only thing that we really know about her. There are no photos of her this is the best we can have with just a coin. And some of these people were also pictured on stamps. But within the intro to her book, she wrote a little bit about her life, and that's the only thing we really know. She was the only African-American woman ever to graduate from the New England Female Medical College, and she did this right before the end of the Civil War. And so what happened was the college was bought out or changed names after that, so that's why she was the only one. And after she got her degree, she went down south and helped care for freed slaves after the Civil War. And she was the first, after she practiced medicine in Boston. And so that was pretty unusual to see not just the African-American, but a female doctor in the South after all this. And finally, I want to talk about Shirley Jackson. And she is the second African-American woman ever to earn a PhD in physics, first ever to earn one from MIT. Basically, her father was one who helped inspire her in science, and he helped her with science projects, he helped her with her classes, and when she was there was only about 20 African Americans at MIT when she was studying there. She was the only one to do theoretical physics. And this was when she got her bachelor's degree. She actually chose to get her PhD from MIT because she wanted to encourage other African Americans to come to that university. And so that was part of her motivation. After that, she did research at Fermilab, at CERN, at Stanford Linear Accelerator. She worked at Bell Labs. She was a faculty member at Rutgers University. Clinton appointed her as chair of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And she's now the 18th president of Rensselaer Polytech Institute. For a while, she was the highest paid university president in the United States. And, she sits on the board of 12 different organizations at last count. Some of them include IBM, the New York Stock Exchange, the Smithsonian, not lightweight stuff. And she has done a lot. And so she basically branched out from not just being a theoretical physicist to also being an administrator. And actually, when I was in Washington, D.C., about a year ago, I was at a talk, and somebody it was really one of the best quotes I'd ever heard, where they said, scientists make good administrators. And the reason why scientists make good administrators is because we're problem solvers. And so it shows you that, getting degrees in physics or in any science leads to problem-solving ability, which was very good in leading this university, and the billions of dollars in endowments and things that she's brought in since then. Now, next slide, I want to talk about why aren't they better known? Why is it that some of these people are just not very known to people outside of this room? And first off, there are a few movies and books about African American scientists and engineers. It's just not something you see or hear about. Within the black community, you don't even hear much about science and engineering. It's not a focus. And nationally, there's a huge issue in that there's just not enough scientists and engineers of any race in this country. Science, the reason why I think this is because science is about solving problems. It's basically the people who go into science are the people who like to solve puzzles, who like to deal with problems, who aren't afraid of challenges. And most people are afraid of problems, and they avoid problems by any means. I mean, if you want to solve a problem, do you call a lawyer or do you call your engineer? And so this leads to problems later on. But another issue is we got this bad image. Math isn't cool compared to sports and music. I mean, you have Usher, you have, pretty much pick your sports person, but we have Steve Urkel. So there's a PR problem around here, too. And this leads to a lack of role models. If people don't feel comfortable majoring in something or studying something when you don't see somebody in front of you who looks like you. And that is a major problem. And so you don't have many qualified science and math teachers in African American schools. I'm not saying teachers, but qualified. And by that I mean somebody that actually has a degree in the area that they're teaching. Having somebody with a biology degree teaching physics in high school is just not as good as having somebody with a physics degree teaching it. And so this is where the role models start. And then later on, you don't see the role models here. And it's all because, I guess, we're not cool enough. But NASA is cool, so at least we've got something going for us. Now, what can you do to help? First off, tell the story. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stories here that need to be told that satisfy a lot of these problems that I pointed out. Also, volunteering to work with young people. There's science fairs all the time. There's all kind of teaching opportunities, all kind of outreach activities that can go on. K through 12 schools sometimes ask for scientists or engineers to come in and give talks. And so this is just a good activity to be involved in. Sometimes there are summer programs. We have some of these at the university, and then there's also other ones at the high schools where you can volunteer. Robert should like this one. Join groups like NSBE. So join NSBE. If you have any questions about that, talk to Robert. So these groups already participate in these outreach activities. The easiest way to kind of get with a group of people who also are interested in a problem and who are doing something. And then finally, further your own education. I mean, the further you go, the more you can do. And so that's just my own little plug, because I'm the person to talk to if you want to further your education. You know, I've got master's degrees and PhDs in physics that we can do. And so there's a lot of different options out here. And you can do this without having to quit your job. So and you could see that if somebody who was 19 years old already had a PhD can go back to school, then pretty much anybody can. Okay. All right. So that's it for me. I guess the questions will be held till the end. And hopefully I didn't go over time too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Time check, yeah, we're probably going to run over, but guys, just stay with us, and if you have to leave, we understand that. This next speaker is Pearl Wright. I'm going to introduce her. Well, I guess I better say who I am. You might not know me. My name is Ralph Anderson, and it's good to see everybody here. I'm the Deputy Director in the Equal Opportunity and Diversity Office here at the Center. Most of you, I think, do know me. Those who don't, we met. Pearl Wright, President and founder of 4W Solutions. She has over 20 years' experience in the aerospace industry, working and running businesses, units from small business contracted to the NASA Johnson Space Center and its prime contractor. Pearl holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's cert from the University of Virginia, Darden School of Business. Pearl has managed a team of computer programmers and system analysts who received the NASA Space Act Award. She's received several awards, including Minority Contracting of the Year. Ms. Wright is highly respected by businesses and civic leaders in the NASA Johnson Space Center community. Pearl's loyalty, professionalism, and entrepreneurial spirit has made 4W Solutions well respected. Please welcome my friend, Pearl Wright.
I first want to say a great thank you to Debbie and to Ralph. I forgot your name, Jessica. It's been great. It's great to come back. I've been here, as he was saying, over 20 years. Now it's 30. I need to update my website a little bit. But it's so nice to come back to a Black History program here at the Johnson Space Center. You don't know. To see you guys here is just great, and to see the Office of Equal Opportunity promote this event is important. So now, as African Americans, we've got to get the word out. We've got to share. This needs to be a standing room only crowd and event, and I think it is worthy of that and deserves that. So I've gotten that out of the way. And as Ralph has said, I am the president of 4W Solutions, and I've been working here in the aerospace industry now for over 30 years. During that time, I started as a secretary. I was a secretary, I was an admin assistant, I was a technical lead, I was a project manager, a business analyst, and a director, all before I became the president of 4W Solutions. I've worked both on-site and off-site, and I've held a number of paid and unpaid and volunteer positions while I was here. And I've certainly benefited from working out here at the NASA Johnson Space Center. In addition to the academic career and the academic degree that I received from Texas Southern University, I was also able to go and take as much job-related training, and it was all available here at Johnson Space Center. Sometimes it was exclusively here at Johnson that I got that training over the years, and so I applaud that, and I encourage you guys to do that as well. But in addition to that, there were university training and other training that I was able to participate in. For that, I was rewarded with a number of promotions and advancement that have helped me to achieve my dream of having my own business. Now, it has not been easy. It is full of hard work, missteps, mistakes, and bumps along the way. However, it is empowering to have your own business, to be your own boss. I thought I would begin my discussion first by giving you a dictionary definition of Black economic empowerment, which means that when confronted with equal power, the people that are voiceless and powerless are able to influence and negotiate better terms for themselves in terms of their standard of living. They're able to build assets and to raise themselves out of poverty. Doors that were previously closed are now open. After all, we now have a Black president, along with a number of Black cabinet members. We have NASA's first Black administrator, Charlie Bolden, and a number of directors at the various NASA centers. You could say that we have done well. Our president promotes and encourages community service, education, and small business on a regular basis. Community service and giving back is what helps empower a people, a community, a race. As an entrepreneur and a beneficiary of Black economic empowerment, I have a responsibility to return to my community and to work within my community to give others hope and to enlarge the population of entrepreneurs, of physicists, of scientists, other scientists, of technicians, computer science folk, and other professionals. So my business model includes community service and giving back. I make a point of talking to others in my community, at schools, at my church, or wherever I can, to give others hope and to let them know that whatever they desire to be in life is available to them. I can share with others my own educational journey. I told you earlier, I completed my college degree while working full-time right here at the Johnson Space Center. With all of the accomplishments and advancements we see in this country, Black economic empowerment eludes too many of us. As Blacks, we are incarcerated at a higher rate. We have poorer health outcomes. And according to the U.S. Department of Commerce, our Black businesses fail twice as fast as other groups of people. And so when it comes to black economic empowerment, we have a long way to go. Furthermore, our money, and you've heard this before, it only stays within our community how many times? Once. Whereas on the average, it will turn 2 and 3 times in other communities, and we need to fix that. A study of African American women small business owners from Houston, Texas was conducted recently. I was a participant in that study. The study's focus was to explore the factors influencing success and the barriers that inhibited success among African American women who own their own businesses. The study found that success and economic empowerment had several important themes that I want to share with you. Number one, the capacity to keep learning. This is something we will hear over and over again. And as business owners and for business owners, this is a lifelong endeavor. Regulations are imposed, laws change with respect to how we do business. There are changes that happen all the time that we need to be informed about. As an entrepreneur, I find myself taking training made available to me by the Johnson Space Center, the Small Business Administration, the Small Business Development Center, the City of Houston, and other places. There is no shortage of information. We have to make time in our schedule to get the training. We need to know how to read financial statements, understand what banks are looking for when you apply for a loan, and then you'll know why you're not getting it. We're not giving them what they want. We need to understand how to broker deals with other businesses and collaborate on opportunities that will ultimately advance our company. I cannot emphasize enough how important access to capital is to a successful business and to business growth. The second theme that came out of the study was freedom to control destiny. For years, there's been a disparity in men and women's pay, their benefits, and advancement opportunities. The ability to control our destiny enables us to determine our pay and decide our future. The third theme was vision and planning. We must be visionaries, and we must plan. If we don't have a plan for our business and a plan going forward, then it's just a dream. It's not anything until you actually plan it. Self-esteem. That's a hard one. It really hit me. The first thing I found myself asking Ralph Anderson when he asked me to be on this panel was, "Are you sure? Me? Why me?" And I was mumbling. But when I shared it with my son, his response was, "Congratulations, Mom. You deserve it." All I'm saying is that we need to realize that we have made great sacrifices to be at the table. And we ought to be proud of the accomplishments that we have made and proud of ourselves, and we need to stop the negative thoughts. The fifth theme I'll share with you deals with mentors, mentoring, and role models, and Dr. Garrison has already talked about it, and I'm sure you'll hear it some more. But when I started my business, I did not know another woman of color in the local area that was doing what I was doing. It was hard. But now, I have a mentor, I have become a mentor, and I have been blessed to have found role models in the industry who I can share my experience with, my challenges with, my successes, and even my failures with. And the sixth theme is networking and support systems. Networking is so important. I have contacts throughout the country now that I didn't have before. Everywhere I go, I try and meet someone that I did not know. And that is the only way to grow. If you associate with the same people all the time, you limit your ability to expand your business, your contacts, and you miss out on opportunities to form a network and a support system that all business owners need. In summary, I would say, make education and learning your friend. Establish a relationship with a good banker. We all need that, whether we're entrepreneurs or not. Become an entrepreneur of integrity. Do not take advantage of those you seek to help. So when you go into the community to give back, remember your morals and your integrity. And lift people up. Don't bring them down. Don't take advantage of them. Be self-motivated. No one else is going to tell me to have a good day, make me get out of bed and go into the office. I'm the boss. Make me work on that proposal that's due, pay my bills, or remind me to pay my employees. Now, my employees will remind me of that. If I miss the payday, they'll remind me of that. Have a story to tell. When I talk about education, I can share with others the path that I took. I can talk about the importance of education and training as an entrepreneur, what made me return to school, and the positive effect it had on my children and my community. My son received his MBA from Rice University last year, some 10 years after receiving his undergraduate degree. My daughter is now in her second year of a doctoral program at the University of Texas, commuting back and forth between Houston and Austin. But you never know who you're going to touch with your story, with whatever you have to share. Everybody has a story to tell, and I can't emphasize that enough. Share it within your household, within your community, and with everybody that you come in contact with. Mentor and help others, whether it is another business owner, a struggling student, or a single parent trying to make decisions about a child who's not doing well in school. You may be able to help out in that situation. What can you do? Ask yourself the question, what can you do to excite, inform, and help our people who have not benefited from economic empowerment? Give them hope. Encourage them to stay in school and to get their education. Volunteer in our school. One more plug for NSBE. The NSBE organization does that, and they do it well. Entrepreneurs have the ability to do that also. Why? We set our own schedules, you know. Invest some time and some resources in our communities. Right now, with the city's planned budget cuts, libraries have limited hours, so persons who would normally go to the library have no place to go for internet access as they apply for jobs. That may be something that business owners can do, or you as an individual can do, to allow someone to have access to the internet so they can be empowered. With all the resources and the opportunities available to us, we still have to work hard and be informed about what is happening locally, nationally, and globally. Black economic empowerment is alive, but it needs to become real for a lot more of us. Thank you very much.
I'm Jackie Reese with the Employee Assistance Program. We're honored to be co-hosting this event today. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Jeffrey L. Bonis, the founder and CEO of the Texas Business Alliance, a nonprofit organization with a mission to equip minority and women-owned businesses to qualified suppliers ready to compete for public, private, and international opportunities through progressive development and specialized training. In this position, he focuses on the unique needs of small businesses, helping them to operate and grow more efficiently through education, financing, and business development strategies, and creates an environment for contracting opportunities with public and private sectors. Boney is also president and CEO of Bonafide Development and Investment Group, LLP, the parent company of Tax Service Express, Bonafide Realty, and Bonafide Consulting. Staying connected to the community, Boney serves in the following capacities: member of the 100 Black Men of America, advisory board for the member of Small Business Administration, and the Port of Houston Authority. Boney has received numerous awards and recognitions for his civic and community involvement and is a member of Leadership Houston Class 27. Boney earned a bachelor's degree in business management and finance from Texas Southern University. A native Houstonian, Jeffrey is married to Sharwin and has 3 beautiful children, Soraya, Jasmine, and Joshua. Jeffrey Boney.
Testing. It's on? Can y'all hear me? All right, wonderful. I thank you all for choosing to stay. I know that many of you have to get back to work, but I promise you that I won't be before you long. And more importantly, I hope that you benefit from what I have to say. First and foremost, I want to thank all of the event organizers for doing such a meaningful thing that is not just limited to the month of February, something that we need to continue to talk about year-round, because Black History Month is American history and should be celebrated every day, not just for 28 days. I want to thank Ms. Deborah Johnson, who serves on my board of directors at the Texas Business Alliance, as well as Ms. Cheryl Harrison, who's been actively involved, and just the whole NASA community for embracing minority and women-owned business development, as well as the development of our youth for the future. What I want to talk to you about today, my resume or what my bio was read, I don't want to go through all that, but Texas Business Alliance, our primary goal is to equip minority and women-owned businesses to be more qualified suppliers so that they can compete for contracts such as the ones that NASA lets out here. And the sad reality is many of our minority and women-owned businesses don't have the skill sets, nor do they focus on business opportunities in certain areas. I like to call it fishing in a different pond. What you find is many of our minority and women-owned businesses fish in the same pond. And what do I mean by that? There's 100 fish over here and 100 fishermen, and there's 100 fish over here and only 2. And what happens is you have a lot of professional services companies that generate out of the minority and women-owned business community. Yes, you have your barbers and your beauticians, you have your realtors, and all of the same type of industry-focused people. But over here, when you talk about building rocket boosters and the various things that NASA needs, or say in the commercial construction industry, which is a $550 billion industry, only 2.7% of African Americans generate revenue out of that $550 billion. 7.7% of Hispanics, and 1.7% of Asians, and 7.6% of women. So there's a lot of opportunity there because it's a white, male-dominated industry. And it's nothing against being white and male and dominating that industry. It's just that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there for people to start fishing in a different pond and focusing on different things. So what the doctor mentioned earlier about going into physics and going into different industries and having it be a point of focus is so imperative. What I'd like to talk to you all about today is simply what if. What if? We're talking about black economic empowerment. What does that really mean? And so the question I pose to all of you, white, black, or whomever, is what if? If, everybody say that with me, if. I mean, come on, say it with a little bit more conviction. If. That's a powerful word when you really, really think about it. I mean, what if I had a different boss? What if I would have picked up that Valentine's Day gift the day before as opposed to, I know that doesn't apply to anybody here. The word if, by definition, the core meaning of the word if is a conjunction. Of course, it basically means circumstances that would have to exist in order for a certain event to happen or certain things to happen. If. My dad used to have a saying, if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. Anybody ever heard that saying? If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. Well, for many black people in the United States of America, a lot of us are drunk with the word if. What if I would have done this? Or what if this would happen? Or what if I would have gotten that loan? Or what if? In 2009, the black buying power was estimated at $836 billion. $836 billion. Black households spent an estimated $507 billion in 2009 on only 27 products and service categories. That's an increase of over or nearly 17% over the $435 billion spent in 2008. As far as population is concerned, Houston has one of the top 5 largest black populations in the United States. And there's 41.1 million black people in the United States. So we're talking about 41.1 million black people in the United States spending 836 or having a buying power of $836 billion. It's a lot of money. Okay, many of you probably don't. I mean, a lot of engineers and folks in here, so I'll do the math for you if you haven't already. Every black person in the United States in 2009, average income was $20,340.64. According to a BET study and a similar study released in November by the Seelig Center at the University of Georgia, it's estimated by the year 2013, the black buying power will be $1.2 trillion in 2013. The average earned income in 2013 will be approximately nearly $30,000 per black person, not household. The buying power of black people in the U.S. is greater than many third world countries per capita GDP. There have been a long questions asked in the black community and by members of the black community is, where's our leaders? Where are they? Where are the black businesses? Well, they're amongst us. They exist. They're already here. We ask questions like, is there a crab in the bucket mentality in the black community? Or do black people really offer a lesser quality product or service? Is Mr. Charlie's ice really colder? Oh, these are questions that I asked. I've seen and I've heard various stories that have gone on around the black community, none more striking. I was a banker for 11 years. I was vice president of small business banking for Washington Mutual Bank. I've seen my share of small businesses come through the doors, and I've declined my share of black and minority and women-owned business loan packages. And one of the things that I saw that exists that was a problem was the lack of true development and preparation before coming to see a banker, which was a great point. Yeah, you definitely want to build a relationship with your banker, but you also want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row and that your business is right. But I never will forget, there's a very prominent man who's no longer here living, but he was very prominent in the city of Houston, and he was approached by the then mayor to actually build a long stretch of development here in the city of Houston. That the mayor said, listen, you can build out whatever you need to build in this particular area of town. He was extremely excited, and so he went to the black community and he went to them and said, listen, everybody in these respective industries, construction, sheetrock, drywall, roofing, whatever the particular business is, you're going to make a boatload of money, more money you've ever seen in your entire lives. So everyone at the table was excited. They were so thrilled because they were about to make more money than they ever seen in their lives. But something happened. When they left the table, a group of them start talking amongst themselves. And guess what the question was? How much money is he going to make on the deal? And so what ended up being an opportunity for everybody to win and benefit in their own lane ended up being nothing. And the development never took place. Why? Because they were worried about what he was going to make. Another black person was going to make. Now, I'm just keeping it real with everybody. I hope y'all don't mind that. But does that not exist in our communities? Where instead of seeking to help and benefit and bless and encourage and build up other black businesses, which we had to do when segregation was in existence, we had no other choice but to support our own businesses, go to our own cleaners, go to our own shoe shine places, our own restaurants. Why? Because there were colors only and then there was whites only. And so because we were forced into doing business with one another, guess what? The prosperity, black economic empowerment took place. It existed by force, not by choice. However, now when integration takes place, what happens to blacks? We choose to go elsewhere and spend our dollars outside of our community. So again, the question is posed, what if? What if black people consciously decided to support black-owned businesses with their primary needs and services? What if black people held black businesses accountable to a higher standard of customer service as opposed to using the perceived lack of quality as an excuse not to support them? What if black people wanted to see as many black businesses become extremely wealthy because of their support of them than just simply worrying how much money they got? I'm sure there are more what ifs that I can ask or think about, but I'd like to hear from some folks, if they have some what ifs. But more importantly than hearing about the what ifs, I'd like the solutions. I'd like to know what will we do from this day forward. Yeah, it's great to have great Black history programs and Black history salutes and highlight the great people like one of my heroes, Mr. Carter G. Woodson, who Black History Month is responsible for, or he is responsible for Black History Month. Although I don't know why they give us only 28 days. I think you should challenge yourself and others to not just ask and answer these questions, but you need to choose to support black businesses on purpose. Not because they're black, but because they're good. Because they deserve the same opportunities, the same respect than that of the other businesses, regardless of their race. And I don't think that you should support black businesses if they deliver poor quality and poor customer service. And don't, and I'm not trying to preach at everybody here, but I'm just trying to encourage us. Don't use an excuse to stop doing business with our black businesses because we had a bad experience. Tell that black business owner that he made a mistake. Tell that black business owner that they should do better. Encourage them to do better. Give them solutions so that we can create our next Black Wall Streets or Rosewoods here in the city of Houston, so that many of them, our youth, as well as those that have the skill sets, as many of the people aforementioned, can come and do business with the NASAs of the world, the city of Houstons of the world, and anyone else for that matter. I guess the only thing to leave with is only if. Thank you.
Wow, what an inspiring and fascinating program. How do I get up here now and close this out, right? We're gonna invite you back on leap year. For sure. So let's take a minute to offer our gratitude to our presenters and their insightful and fascinating information. And to the small and thoughtful committee who made all this happen, will you please stand up, everybody who was involved? My grandmother always told me that appreciation is like an insurance policy. It has to be renewed occasionally. I just have to tell you, take a minute to tell you about a story I was listening to on NPR this morning coming in. Some of you might have heard it. They were talking about a school in the Heights, Hogg Middle School. And it's a very diverse neighborhood where I live, so of course it caught my attention because it's where I live. The school has been asking for, probably begging for help for some time. I mean, asking for some of the simplest things like science supplies. If you go on the web and Google it, you'll find some of those stories. But not until more families moved in to this diverse neighborhood and noticed that their children would not be receiving the education that they envisioned did things start to happen and did news start to evolve around this. Why? Because it was about them. They are now telling their story. Storytelling, as everybody said today, is a big part of many cultures and a great way to share history and heritage and lessons learned with upcoming generations. I would like to encourage each of you to leave here today and tell a story honoring those who made a difference in the history of Americans and NASA employees of color. The people that you may be talking about do not necessarily have to be of color, because many have reached out when it became about them. Thank you again for your participation. We encourage you to eat some enticing food at the cafe today and enjoy the Black Heritage exhibits outside. We are going to leave a few minutes for question and answers. We thank you for staying if you want to hear some more from these fascinating folks.
Now is the part for the question and answer. So if you would raise your hand if you have a question, and I can come to you. Don't be shy. Okay.
Okay, this question is for Jeffrey Boney. When you said the $20,000 average income for the African American households, does that? I'm sorry.
Per person.
Oh, per person. Does that include the ones who are incarcerated also?
That does not include those that are incarcerated or homeless. Yeah. Currently incarcerated.
Any more questions? Okay, I think that's it. Thank everyone for coming.